Hey everyone, welcome back to our channel. So in this video, I'm going to talk about Elastic Container Service in AWS. So this video is an overview session where I'll walk through what exactly ECS and what are the different compute options we have in the ECS. And we will also talk about the architecture and how ECS works from the user's perspective. And finally, we will also deploy a simple Nginx web server and we will access through a load balancer. So let's not waste any time. Let's jump into the concept. So ECS is a fully managed container orchestration service that is completely provided by Amazon Web Services. So coming to the one more point. So here, using the ECS, you can run, you can stop, and you can manage Docker containers at any scale. And remember, so in the ECS, you no need to install Kubernetes or you can manage the master nodes. And this ECS can be integrated with the many other AWS services. Like you can integrate with EC2 or Fargate or the ECR or load balancers or IAM or CloudWatch and etc. So if someone is asking why AWS designed EC2, you can say the EC2 is designed to provide high performance and as well as the high scalability. Okay. And coming to the one more point, so generally the ECS supports microservices architecture. Okay. Yeah. So these are all some of the important points for the what exactly ECS and why AWS designed ECS. So now let's talk about the ECS compute options one by one. So there are mainly two compute options we have in the ECS. The first one is nothing but EC2 launch type. And the second one is nothing but we have AWS Fargate. So with EC2 launch type, your containers run on the instances that you manage. And here you can control capacity and scaling and instance types, patching activities and networking, everything. So generally, so we will be using the EC2 launch type. So when the workload is predictable and when you want to optimize the cost and when you need a custom operating system or AMI and when you want more control. The second one is nothing but AWS Fargate. So as I told, it's like a game changer. So most of the times, so we'll be using the AWS Fargate, where it is completely a serverless compute engine for the containers. So you don't need to create or you don't need to manage EC2 instances. You don't patch servers and you don't configure auto scaling groups also. So everything will be handled by the AWS itself. So that is nothing but the AWS Fargate. Okay. So in the hands-on activities also, we will be using the launch type for AWS Fargate only. So before that, let's understand what exactly the ECS architecture. So once it is done, then we'll talk about the application workflow. So here we have the first component called cluster. So the cluster is nothing but simply we can say it's like a logical group of the compute capacity. It could be the number of EC2 instances or AWS Fargate. And the second component is nothing but the task definition. So the task definition is nothing but it's like we can say a blueprint for your application. So where it will contain the Docker image, the CPU, RAM, and port mappings, environment variables, and logging, and etc. And here in the task, a task is nothing but it's like a running instance of your task definition. So think of it as a pod in the Kubernetes. Okay. And here we have one more component called service. The service ensures a desired number of tasks that are always running. Okay. And remember, the service only it will handle the load balancing and the service discovery and auto scaling and everything. And finally, we will have the container agent. So that will communicate between the ECS control plane and as well as the EC2 instances. Okay. So finally, we have one more component called the load balancer. So where it will route the traffic to the container task. So these are all the components or if we can say the architecture of ECS. Now let's understand the application workflow. So in the workflow, so first we are going to create a cluster in the ECS. So in the cluster, so we will be creating a task definition. And in the task definition, we are going to create a service. And in the service, we are going to specify, the container and the container name called Nginx. And finally, so we are going to access, the web content through the load balancer DNS. Okay. So there you will get, it works when you're using HTTPD, that is Apache web server. So if you're using Nginx, so you will get, the different content, something like a welcome to Nginx. Okay. So this is all about the application workflow. Now let's see how we are going to create a cluster and how we can deploy Nginx using AWS Fargate. Let me navigate to the AWS Management Console first. So first of all, let me navigate to the ECS Management Console. So click on Elastic Container Service here. So this is the dashboard of Elastic Container Service. So where it is a fully managed service by AWS. So where we can run and where we can stop and we can manage containers on the cluster. So if you want to create a cluster, so first navigate to the clusters. So click on create a cluster here. So you can just specify any cluster name. So let me remove this name. I'm just going with one cluster called something like a production cluster. Just specify a meaningful name. Just scroll down here and you can choose the infrastructure. So which one you want, Fargate, or if you want, Fargate and managed instances. So I'm just going with the Fargate only. And monitoring and encryption, I don't want. So if you want to specify the tags, you can just specify the tags. So you can just specify the key called a name and the value. It could be anything. So let's go for something like, the prod cluster. And once it is done, so finally click on create cluster. So generally it will take some time to create cluster. So wait for a few seconds. Yeah. So now the cluster, it is successfully created. So just give refresh here. So if you observe, there is no task running here and there is no service also. The service also 0 here. So after creating cluster, now let me navigate to the task definitions and we'll see how we are going to create a new task definition. Click on create task definition and just specify the task definition name here. I'm just going with something like, the Nginx as a task definition. Just scroll down here. You can choose any launch type, AWS Fargate or, managed, instances or AWS instances. Anything is fine. So I'm going with AWS Fargate, where it is completely serverless compute for containers. Scroll down here. You can choose operating system. So you can go with any operating system. And if you want to specify the CPU and the memory, you can just specify how much CPU you want and how much memory you want. So I'm going with the default. And the task role also I'm going with the default. And the task execution role, if you want to create one new role, just click on create a default role. Or if you have any existing roles here, you can also choose the existing roles as well. That is up to you. Okay. So let's go for create a new default role. And you can just specify the container name here. Let's say the container name is, for example, Nginx. Okay. And whenever if you have any custom image, so in the ECR, so there is, in the container registry, so you can also browse your ECR images. Okay. That is a private repository images. So if you don't have any ECR images, so better you can go with the Nginx latest as, the image URI. And just scroll down, you can just specify the container port number. So go with port number 80. And HTTP, it's a type of a TCP protocol. And the port name, you can just specify any meaningful name here, something like Nginx. Okay. And just scroll down here. So just environment variables and everything, just go with the default options. Just scroll down, come to the end. So ephemeral storage, I don't want. And even the volume also, I don't want. Click on create task definition. So once the task definition is active, now let me navigate to the cluster and I'll create a service in the cluster. So open the cluster, just scroll down here. As of now, there is no service in the cluster. Click on create a service. So choose the task definition here. So just now I created a task definition called Nginx and scroll down. And you can choose the launch type in the compute options. So let's go for AWS Fargate. The version I'm going with the latest one. So the deployment configuration, just go with the default, everything optional. And here in the networking, I'm going with the default VPC. And the subnets, you can go with the default subnets. So if you want to create a new security group here, you can create a new security group. So if you want to specify the security group name, you can just go with any custom name here. I'm just going with ECS Nginx security group. And just scroll down here. So you can choose a protocol called HTTP or HTTPS protocol. So as the port number I specified 80, I'm going with the protocol called HTTP itself. And in place of source, just go with the anywhere IPv4. Even if you want to specify the custom IP address also, you can just specify the custom IP address. That is up to you. I'm going with the anywhere IPv4. and scroll down. So click on the load balancing and just create a load balancer here. So you can go with application load balancer or network load balancer. So let me go with, the application load balancer. And the container, a container on the port number, I'm going with, the Nginx 8080. So you can just specify the load balancer name. Let's say this is application load balancer Nginx container. And just scroll down here. You can just specify the target group name. So ALB target group for Nginx. Scroll down. Everything is go with the default settings. And finally, click on create service. Okay. So once the service is created, once the service it is in the active state, so wait for a few more seconds and click on the task. So if you observe here, the task status is still it is in the provisioning state. So wait until the task state changes to running. So now the task status it is changed to running state. So once it is done, now open the application load balancer. Let me open this EC2 in the new tab. So go to the load balancers, click on the load balancer here. So here we have one load balancer called, so that is nothing but the application load balancer. And the state of the load balancer, it is in the active state. Select your load balancer, and here we have the DNS, copy the DNS of the load balancer, and open a new tab and just paste the load balancer DNS over the internet. So access the Nginx web server. Now, if you observe here, so we will get the content called, so welcome to Nginx. Okay. So this is how we can deploy a simple Nginx web server in the ECS cluster. Okay. So finally, if you want to check logs in the CloudWatch service, so let me navigate to the CloudWatch management console. So let me open this CloudWatch in the new tab. So go to the CloudWatch service, and in the CloudWatch, in the left side, we have a log section. Under the log section, you can see we have log groups. Click on the log groups and look for ECS, the task name. So the task name is nothing but the Nginx. So open this log group first. So inside the log group, so here we will have the log stream. So if you open the latest log stream here, so in the log stream, you can see all the Nginx access logs. Okay. And all these log events are useful for debugging and as well as, the monitoring. Okay. So this is how we can check the logs in the CloudWatch service. So this is all about the overview of ECS and how to create cluster and how to deploy Nginx, a web server in the cluster, and how we can check logs in the CloudWatch service. So thanks for watching. If you found this video helpful, kindly do like and share it with your friends. And don't forget to comment below if you want me to cover any specific topic in the next video. So make sure to subscribe to the channel and stay tuned for the next video. Thank you.